I'm Janet, 28 years old, and I thought building a six-figure marketing consultancy would be the hardest thing I'd ever do. Growing up in a middle-class family where my parents always talked about playing it safe, I never imagined that my biggest challenge wouldn't come from competitors or market crashes. It would come from the two people who were supposed to support me unconditionally. The same people who taught me to work hard and follow my dreams would eventually try to steal everything I built with my own hands. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories. Now let me tell you how my own parents tried to steal everything I built. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs much earlier. My childhood in suburban Denver, Colorado, was pretty typical for a middle-class family in the 90s. My father, Harold, worked as an insurance agent for a small firm downtown, while my mother, Dolores, kept books part-time for local businesses. Money was always tight in our household. I remember countless dinners where my parents discussed overdue bills, delayed car repairs, and dreams they'd given up because of financial constraints. Harold was the type of man who believed in traditional paths to success. College degree, steady job, reliable paycheck, and eventually retirement with a pension. He'd often tell me stories about people who took risks and lost everything, using them as cautionary tales about why security mattered more than ambition. Dolores supported his conservative mindset, though she sometimes showed flashes of entrepreneurial spirit when helping her small business clients solve problems. During high school, I discovered I had a natural talent for marketing and promotion. I organized successful fundraisers for our drama club, created eye-catching posters that actually got students to attend school events, and even helped a local pizza place increase their student customer base through creative flyer campaigns. My business teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, encouraged me to pursue marketing in college, but my parents worried about job prospects in such a creative field. At the University of Colorado, I threw myself into business studies with a marketing focus. While my classmates partied, I worked part-time jobs and studied late into the night. I graduated with a solid GPA and immediately started applying for marketing positions at Denver companies. The job market was competitive, and after 6 months of rejections, I decided to try something different. At age 22, I launched my first business venture, an online jewelry store featuring handmade pieces from local artisans. I invested my entire savings of $3,000 into inventory and a basic website. The business failed within 8 months. I learned harsh lessons about inventory management, customer acquisition costs, and the importance of market research. My parents' response was predictable. "See, Janet? This is why you need a real job. These computer businesses are just fads." But failure taught me more than any college course ever could. I spent the next year working as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized accounting firm while planning my next venture. This time, I focused on what I did best, helping businesses improve their marketing strategies. I started taking freelance clients in the evenings, creating social media campaigns and promotional materials for small businesses around Denver. My breakthrough came when I approached Tony Martinez, owner of a small restaurant chain called Mesa Verde Grill. His 3 locations were struggling to attract younger customers, despite serving excellent Mexican fusion cuisine. I proposed a comprehensive social media strategy combined with targeted local advertising. Within 3 months, his weekend reservations increased by 40%, and his weekday lunch business doubled. Tony became my first major success story and my biggest advocate. He referred me to other restaurant owners, retail shop managers, and service businesses throughout the Denver metro area. By the end of my first year as an independent marketing consultant, I was earning $3,000 monthly while still working my day job. My parents' attitude toward my business started shifting as my income grew. Harold began asking detailed questions about my client contracts, wanting to know exactly how much each client paid and what services I provided. Dolores showed interest in my bookkeeping methods and suggested ways to organize my financial records. At first, I interpreted their curiosity as genuine parental interest in my success. During family dinners, Harold would probe deeper into my business operations. How do you price your services, Janet? What happens if a client doesn't pay on time? Do you have contracts that protect you? I answered his questions openly, thinking he was finally starting to understand and support my entrepreneurial journey. I even shared my profit margins and client retention rates, proud to show them that my computer business was not only legitimate, but profitable. The first real red flag came during a Sunday barbecue at their house. Harold cornered me while I was helping flip burgers and asked if I'd ever considered bringing in business partners. You know, Janet, successful businesses usually have multiple people involved. Maybe someone with more life experience could help you avoid costly mistakes. When I mentioned that I preferred maintaining full control of my company, his expression darkened slightly before he forced a smile and changed the subject. By my second year in business, everything was accelerating beyond my wildest expectations. Client referrals were flooding in faster than I could handle them alone. My monthly revenue jumped from $3,000 to $15,000, and I was working 70-hour weeks just to keep up with demand. The spare bedroom I'd converted into a home office was no longer sufficient for my growing operations. I needed professional office space, better equipment, and at least one full-time employee to help manage the workload. After researching commercial real estate in downtown Denver, I found a perfect 1,200 square foot office space for $2,000 monthly. Combined with new computers, professional software licenses, office furniture, and hiring costs, I needed $25,000 to make the expansion happen. Traditional bank loans proved challenging despite my business success. At 26 years old, with limited credit history, loan officers were skeptical about my ability to manage a larger operation. I'd built my business through reinvesting profits, rather than taking on debt, which ironically worked against me when trying to secure expansion funding. That's when Harold made an offer that seemed like a perfect solution. During a family dinner in March, he and Dolores presented what they called a family investment opportunity. They offered to provide $30,000 for my business expansion in exchange for 20% equity in my company. Harold explained that they'd been saving money for years and wanted to invest in something more profitable than traditional retirement accounts. "We believe in you, Janet," Dolores said warmly. "We've watched you build this business from nothing, and we want to be part of your success." Harold nodded enthusiastically, adding that family partnerships often worked better than dealing with outside investors who didn't understand your vision. The proposed investment agreement seemed straightforward on the surface. They would provide $30,000 immediately, and in return they'd own 20% of the company and receive 20% of all future profits. Harold had prepared a legal document that outlined these terms in what he called simple language that keeps lawyers out of our family business. However, when I actually read the contract, the language was far from simple. Dense paragraphs filled with legal terminology covered scenarios I didn't fully understand. There were clauses about decision-making authority, asset distribution, and partnership dissolution that seemed overly complex for a basic investment agreement. When I suggested having a lawyer review the document, Harold's reaction was swift and emotional. "Janet, we're family. Why would you need lawyers when you're dealing with your own parents? Don't you trust us?" Dolores chimed in with hurt feelings, explaining how they'd already withdrawn the money from their retirement savings and were excited to help me succeed. "If you bring lawyers into this, it means you don't see us as family anymore." The pressure was enormous. They'd already committed their money. I desperately needed funding for expansion, and questioning their motives felt like accusing them of having malicious intentions. After a long, exhausting day managing client crises, I signed the partnership agreement at their kitchen table on a Thursday night in late March. The immediate benefits were undeniable. Within 2 weeks, I'd secured the downtown office space, purchased 3 new computers with professional design software, and hired Linda Chen as my first full-time employee. Linda was a talented graphic designer with 5 years of experience who brought creativity and efficiency to our client projects. Business exploded almost immediately after the expansion. The professional office space gave clients confidence in my company's stability and growth potential. Linda's design skills elevated our marketing materials to a completely new level. Client referrals multiplied as our improved capabilities allowed us to take on larger, more complex projects. Within 6 months of the expansion, my client base had doubled from 12 regular accounts to 24 active clients. Monthly revenue climbed steadily, reaching $50,000 by September. I was landing contracts with established Denver businesses, including a major hotel chain and 2 technology startups that needed comprehensive branding and marketing strategies. However, success brought unexpected complications. Harold and Dolores began treating the business like their personal investment project. They insisted on weekly business meetings at their house every Sunday, where they'd review financial reports and discuss strategic decisions. What started as family support gradually transformed into something that felt more like supervision and control. During these meetings, Harold would scrutinize every expense and question decisions I'd made throughout the week. "Why did you spend $800 on that software upgrade? Couldn't you have found something cheaper?" Dolores would review our client list and offer suggestions about which accounts to prioritize and which ones to potentially drop. Their involvement escalated beyond weekly meetings. Harold started showing up at the office unannounced, introducing himself to clients as my business partner, and discussing projects he knew nothing about. Dolores began calling our largest clients directly to check in about their satisfaction with our services, often confusing them with questions about billing and project timelines. The success milestone that should have been my greatest triumph became the catalyst for everything falling apart. By the end of my 3rd year in business, my company had officially crossed into 6-figure annual revenue territory. Local business publications featured articles about young entrepreneurs making their mark in Denver's growing economy. I was invited to speak at entrepreneurship meetups and received recognition from the Denver Chamber of Commerce as an emerging business leader. My parents' public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Harold bragged to neighbors, coworkers, and anyone who would listen about their successful business venture. At family gatherings and social events, they'd proudly share details about revenue growth and client acquisitions as if they were equal partners in building the company. Dolores would show people newspaper clippings featuring my business, emphasizing how their investment had made everything possible. But behind closed doors, their behavior became increasingly controlling and problematic. The weekly business meetings evolved into interrogation sessions, where they demanded detailed financial reports, client communication records, and explanations for every business decision I made. Harold started requiring written summaries of my daily activities and insisted on approving any expenditures over $500. The situation reached a breaking point when Harold began interfering directly with my staff and clients. He'd arrive at the office during important client meetings, interrupting presentations to offer his own insights about marketing strategies he'd read about online. Linda, my graphic designer, complained that Harold was questioning her work methods and suggesting design changes that contradicted client specifications. Even more problematic was Dolores's decision to contact our biggest client, Rocky Mountain Financial Services, directly about a billing discrepancy she'd noticed in our accounting records. She called their accounting department without consulting me first, creating confusion and embarrassment when they had to explain that their primary contact should be me, not my family bookkeeper. The professional embarrassment was mortifying. Rocky Mountain Financial's project manager, Sarah Williams, called me immediately after Dolores's contact to express concern about our business structure and communication protocols. "Janet, we hired your company specifically because of your professionalism and direct communication style. Having family members calling our accounting department without context creates problems for everyone involved." I realized that my parents' involvement was actively damaging the professional reputation I'd spent years building. When I tried to address these concerns with them, their response was swift and defensive. Harold accused me of being ungrateful and forgetting how their investment had made my success possible. "Without our $30,000, you'd still be working out of your bedroom, Janet. We deserve to be involved in major business decisions." Dolores played the emotional manipulation card perfectly. After everything we've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us. We invested our retirement savings because we believed in you, and now you want to shut us out." The guilt was overwhelming, but I knew something had to change before my business relationships were permanently damaged. The situation escalated when Harold demanded an official title within the company structure. He wanted business cards identifying him as co-founder and insisted that major client contracts should list him as an authorized representative. When I explained that clients hired my company specifically for my expertise and that adding unauthorized family members could create legal complications, he became angry and accusatory. "You're being selfish and short-sighted, Janet. Successful businesses have management teams, not single-person operations. We're trying to help you grow into something bigger than your limited vision." His words stung because part of me wondered if he might be right about needing business partners, even though every instinct told me his approach was wrong. The tension was affecting my work quality and mental health. I found myself dreading client meetings because I never knew if Harold might show up unannounced. Linda mentioned that she was considering looking for another job because the office environment had become uncomfortable and unpredictable. Two potential clients decided to work with competitors after meeting Harold during what should have been routine project discussions. My business was suffering because of family drama, and I knew that without significant changes, everything I'd built could collapse within months. The 20% equity my parents owned was starting to feel like a noose around my neck, limiting my ability to make independent decisions about my own company's future. The confrontation that changed everything happened on a cold Tuesday morning in January. Harold and Dolores requested an emergency family meeting at their house, claiming they had important business matters to discuss. When I arrived, I found legal documents spread across their dining room table and expressions on their faces that I'd never seen before. "Janet, we've been doing a lot of thinking about the direction of your business." Harold began, his tone more formal than usual. "Dolores and I believe it's time for some significant changes in the company structure." He slid a thick document across the table toward me. The header read, "Amended Partnership Agreement," in bold letters. What I read next made my blood run cold. My parents were demanding majority ownership of my company. The new agreement would give them 51% control in exchange for an additional $20,000 investment, effectively making me a minority partner in the business I'd built from scratch. "This is insane," I said, my voice shaking with disbelief. "You can't be serious about this." Harold's expression remained stern and businesslike as he explained their reasoning. They'd researched similar businesses and determined that my company was undervalued and poorly managed. With their life experience and business acumen, they could transform it into something much more profitable. Dolores chimed in with what sounded like a rehearsed speech about protecting their investment and ensuring the business reached its full potential. "You're still young, Janet. You don't understand how to scale a business properly or manage larger operations. We're trying to save you from making costly mistakes that could destroy everything." The most shocking part was their timeline. They gave me exactly 30 days to sign the new partnership agreement or face legal consequences. Harold explained that their original investment contract included clauses that would allow them to force a business dissolution and asset liquidation if I refused to accept their reasonable management proposals. "You can sign this agreement and continue running day-to-day operations under our guidance, or we can take this to court and let a judge decide what's fair," Harold said coldly. "Either way, we're going to protect our investment and ensure this business operates properly." I left their house in complete shock, clutching the legal documents and trying to process what had just happened. The two people who'd raised me, who'd taught me about hard work and integrity, were essentially threatening to steal my business unless I surrendered control to them. That night, I spent hours researching business law and partnership agreements online. The more I learned, the more terrified I became. My parents' original investment contract was more complex than I'd realized, and there were indeed clauses that could potentially give them leverage in a legal dispute. I scheduled an emergency consultation with Sandra Morrison, a business attorney who specialized in partnership disputes. Sandra's initial assessment was sobering. While my parents couldn't automatically take majority control of my company, Their investment agreement did give them certain rights that could complicate any legal battle. The good news is that you built this business primarily with your own work and initial investment, Sandra explained. The bad news is that partnership disputes can be expensive, time-consuming, and unpredictable. We need to document everything going forward and prepare for the possibility of a lengthy court battle. Following Sandra's advice, I started recording all interactions with my parents and saving every email, text message, and written communication related to the business. I also began researching their claims about business valuation and management expertise, preparing to challenge their assertions in court if necessary. The family relationship deteriorated rapidly over the following weeks. Thanksgiving dinner turned into a screaming match when Harold accused me of being disrespectful and ungrateful. Christmas was canceled entirely after Dolores sent a text message saying they couldn't pretend everything was normal, while I was destroying the family. The emotional toll was devastating, but I knew that giving in to their demands would mean losing everything I'd worked for. I'd rather fight and potentially lose my business than surrender it to people who'd manipulated and threatened me. The little girl who'd always sought her parents' approval was gone, replaced by a woman who understood that sometimes protecting your dreams means disappointing the people you love most. The breakthrough that would ultimately save my business came from an unexpected source: my parents' own carelessness with technology. Harold had always struggled with computers and smartphones, often asking me to help him with basic tasks like sending emails or updating software. This technological illiteracy would prove to be their downfall. In early February, while helping Harold troubleshoot his email account on his laptop, I noticed he'd left multiple browser tabs open with his Gmail inbox visible. One particular email thread caught my attention because the subject line mentioned my business name. My heart raced as I realized he'd been discussing their legal strategy with Dolores through email, apparently forgetting that digital communications create permanent records. When Harold stepped away to answer a phone call, I quickly scanned the visible emails. What I found was far worse than I'd imagined. These weren't just discussions about legitimate business concerns. They were detailed plans to manipulate me into signing over control of my company. The most damaging email was dated 3 weeks before their ultimatum meeting. Harold had written to Dolores, "I think we've got her cornered now. If we pressure her hard enough with the legal threats, she'll sign anything to avoid a court battle. Once we have majority ownership, we can fire her and run the business ourselves. She's built something valuable, but she's too young and naive to maximize its potential." Dolores's response was equally revealing. I feel bad about how upset she got, but this is for her own good. She doesn't understand real business management. Once we're in control, we can hire professional managers and turn this into a serious company instead of Janet's little hobby project. Additional emails revealed the extent of their planning. They'd consulted with a business broker about selling my client list, researched hiring replacement staff to professionalize the operation, and even discussed changing the company name to something that sounded more established and trustworthy. The most shocking discovery was their complete disregard for my role in the business I'd created. Harold wrote, "The hard part was getting the initial clients, but any decent marketing person could maintain those relationships. Janet thinks she's irreplaceable, but most of what she does could be handled by someone with proper business training." I carefully photographed every relevant email with my phone, making sure to capture the full sender information, timestamps, and message content. I also forwarded several of the most damaging emails to my personal account, creating backup copies that my parents couldn't delete or modify. Armed with this evidence, I met with Sandra Morrison the next day to plan our legal strategy. Sandra's reaction to the emails was immediate and enthusiastic. "Janet, this changes everything. These communications demonstrate clear intent to defraud you of your business ownership through deception and manipulation. We're not just defending against their claims anymore. We can file countercharges for attempted fraud and breach of fiduciary duty." We spent the next week organizing all the evidence into a comprehensive legal package. In addition to the emails, we gathered 3 years of business financial records proving that I'd built the company primarily through my own work and initial investment. We also collected testimonials from clients who'd hired my company specifically because of my personal expertise and who'd expressed concerns about my parents' interference. Sandra helped me understand the legal implications of my parents' actions. By accepting investment in my company, they'd assumed certain fiduciary responsibilities to act in the business's best interests. Their secret plans to remove me and sell company assets for their personal benefit violated these responsibilities and could result in serious legal consequences for them. The preparation process was emotionally draining, but also empowering. For the first time since their ultimatum, I felt like I had real weapons to fight back with, instead of just hoping for the best. The evidence was clear, documented, and devastating to their claims about acting in the business's best interests. We also prepared for the possibility that my parents might try to destroy or deny the email evidence. Sandra arranged for a computer forensics expert to create certified copies of all digital communications, ensuring that even if Harold deleted his emails, we'd have legally admissible proof of their contents. As the 30-day deadline approached, I felt a strange combination of anxiety and confidence. The scared young woman who'd signed their original investment agreement was gone, replaced by someone who understood that business success sometimes requires fighting for what you've earned, even against people you love. The courtroom showdown took place on a crisp Monday morning in March at the Denver District Court. I arrived early with Sandra, my stomach churning with nervous energy, but my resolve absolutely firm. Across the aisle, Harold and Dolores sat with their attorney, Richard Blackwood, an expensive lawyer Harold had hired, using what remained of their retirement savings. Their confidence was obvious and intimidating. Harold wore his best suit and carried a briefcase full of documents he'd prepared to support their case. Dolores looked nervous but determined, occasionally whispering to their lawyer and glancing in my direction with expressions that mixed disappointment and righteous anger. The proceeding began with opening statements. Richard Blackwood painted a picture of ungrateful daughter who'd forgotten how her parents' investment and guidance had made her success possible. He argued that Harold and Dolores deserved majority control because their financial contribution and business experience were essential to the company's continued growth. Your Honor, the defendants provided crucial startup capital and ongoing business mentorship that transformed a struggling freelance operation into a thriving company, Blackwood explained. They're simply asking for ownership control that reflects their actual contribution to the business's success. Sandra's opening statement was more measured but equally compelling. She outlined how I'd built the business through years of personal effort starting long before my parents' investment. She emphasized that their investment was presented as family support, not a hostile takeover attempt, and that their recent demands violated both legal and ethical boundaries. The first phase of testimony focused on establishing the business's history and growth timeline. I explained how I developed my marketing skills, landed initial clients through personal effort, and built a reputation in Denver's business community entirely through my own work. Financial records supported every claim, showing steady revenue growth that began years before my parents' investment. Harold's testimony painted a different picture. He portrayed himself as a seasoned business professional who'd provided essential guidance and financial backing for my amateur operation. He claimed that without their investment and advice, my business would have failed within months due to poor management and unrealistic expectations. Janet is a bright girl with some natural talent, but she lacks the experience and judgment necessary to run a serious business, Harold testified confidently. Dolores and I have 40 years of combined business experience. We've seen what works and what doesn't, and we're trying to prevent Janet from making mistakes that could destroy everything. Dolores's testimony was more emotional, focusing on their hurt feelings and genuine desire to help me succeed. She talked about their pride in my accomplishments and their frustration with my stubborn refusal to accept their guidance. We're not trying to hurt Janet. We love her and want her to succeed. But sometimes parents have to make tough decisions to protect their children from their own poor judgment. The turning point came when Sandra introduced the email evidence. She handed printed copies to the judge, while explaining how we discovered Harold's electronic communications with Dolores about their true intentions regarding my business. The courtroom atmosphere shifted dramatically as the judge read the emails aloud. Harold's confident demeanor cracked visibly when he heard his own words. "Once we have majority ownership, we can fire her and run the business ourselves." The audible gasp from the gallery when the judge read Dolores's description of my business as Janet's little hobby project was devastating to their credibility. Richard Blackwood's attempts to discredit the email evidence fell flat. He argued that private communications between spouses were taken out of context and didn't reflect their true intentions. However, Sandra methodically walked through multiple emails spanning several weeks, demonstrating a clear pattern of deceptive planning and manipulation. The most damaging moment came when Sandra asked Harold directly about his email statement regarding firing me after gaining control. Harold's attempt to explain his comments as hypothetical discussion was unconvincing, especially when confronted with additional emails detailing specific plans for replacing me with hired managers. Character witnesses for my defense included 3 major clients who testified about my professional competence and their concerns about my parents' interference. Sarah Williams from Rocky Mountain Financial Services explained how Dolores's unauthorized contact had created confusion and undermined confidence in our business relationship. Tony Martinez. My first major client provided powerful testimony about how I'd transformed his restaurant business through innovative marketing strategies that required specialized knowledge and personal creativity. Janet didn't just implement generic marketing tactics, Tony explained. She understood our specific challenges and created customized solutions that tripled our customer base. That's not something you can hire any marketing person to do. Linda Chen, my graphic designer, testified about the toxic work environment created by Harold's unexpected office visits and inappropriate involvement in client projects. Her testimony illustrated how my parents' interference was actively damaging business operations and employee morale. By the time testimony concluded, the contrast between the two narratives was stark. My parents had presented themselves as experienced business mentors, being unfairly excluded from a company they'd helped create. The evidence painted them as manipulative individuals attempting to steal a business they'd contributed relatively little to building. Judge Patricia Reynolds' final ruling was comprehensive and decisive. She rejected every aspect of my parents' ownership claims, finding that their investment gave them no right to majority control or management authority. She specifically cited the email evidence as proof that their demands were motivated by greed, rather than legitimate business concerns. The court finds that the defendant's recent demands represent a clear attempt to defraud the plaintiff of her rightfully owned business assets, Judge Reynolds stated. The electronic communications presented as evidence demonstrate premeditated plans to remove the plaintiff from a company she created and built primarily through her own efforts. The countersuit was equally successful. The judge ordered Harold and Dolores to pay all my legal fees totaling nearly $15,000 and imposed additional financial penalties for their attempted fraud. She also issued a restraining order preventing them from interfering with my business operations or contacting my clients without authorization. The courtroom victory was complete, but the emotional cost was enormous. As Harold and Dolores left the courthouse without speaking to me, I felt simultaneously triumphant and heartbroken. I'd protected my business and proven my independence, but I'd also potentially lost my family forever. The immediate aftermath of our court victory was a strange mixture of relief, exhaustion, and profound sadness. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt like I'd aged 5 years in a single morning. I'd won the legal battle and saved my business, but the cost was watching my parents walk away without a word, their faces reflecting anger and humiliation that cut through me like a knife. Sandra Morrison handled the post-trial paperwork efficiently, ensuring that all court orders were properly filed and that my business assets remained completely under my control. The restraining order preventing my parents from interfering with operations provided immediate peace of mind, but it also formalized the breakdown of our family relationship in a way that felt devastatingly final. Business recovery happened faster than I dared to hope. Within a week of the trial, Linda returned to work with renewed enthusiasm, relieved that the toxic atmosphere created by my parents' interference was finally gone. Our clients who'd been watching the family drama unfold with understandable concern expressed strong support for the outcome and confidence in our company's stability. The local business community's reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Word of the court case had spread through Denver's entrepreneurship networks, and many fellow business owners reached out with support and admiration for my willingness to fight for what I'd built. Several potential clients mentioned that my handling of the family crisis had actually increased their confidence in my company's professionalism and resilience. Within 3 months of the trial, our revenue had rebounded to record levels. New clients were signing contracts faster than we could accommodate them, forcing me to hire 2 additional employees to handle the increased workload. The company that my parents had tried to steal was now more successful than ever, validating every decision I'd made to resist their demands. Personal healing proved more complicated than business recovery. The betrayal trauma from people I'd loved and trusted unconditionally created emotional wounds that couldn't be resolved through legal victories or professional success. I started working with Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a therapist who specialized in family relationship conflicts, to process the complex feelings of grief, anger, and guilt that the court battle had generated. Therapy helped me understand that my parents' actions reflected their own insecurities and fears, rather than any deficiency in my character or abilities. Harold and Dolores had spent their lives playing it safe, working traditional jobs, and watching other people achieve the kind of success they'd always dreamed about. When my business became successful, their pride mixed with envy in ways that eventually consumed their better judgment. The relationship with my parents evolved slowly and painfully over the following months. Initially, there was no contact at all. Harold and Dolores were too angry and embarrassed to reach out, while I was too hurt and protective of my newfound peace to initiate communication. Family holidays passed without celebration. Birthdays went unacknowledged, and the silence stretched into something that felt permanent. The first breakthrough came 6 months after the trial, when Dolores sent a brief text message asking about my health after hearing through mutual family friends that I'd been sick with the flu. The message was awkward and formal, but it represented the first crack in the wall of silence that had separated us since the courthouse. Rebuilding trust required establishing completely new boundaries and expectations. When we eventually started having occasional supervised visits, usually at neutral locations like restaurants, the conversations focused on safe topics like weather, current events, and mutual acquaintances. Business discussions were strictly off-limits, and any mention of the company or the legal battle resulted in immediate termination of the visit. Professional growth accelerated as I channeled the lessons learned from my family crisis into helping other entrepreneurs navigate similar challenges. I started speaking at business meetups and conferences about the importance of protecting your company from well-meaning but destructive family interference. My story resonated with audiences because family business conflicts are surprisingly common but rarely discussed openly. The company expanded beyond my original vision as we hired additional staff and developed new service offerings. We moved to a larger office space in downtown Denver, implemented professional management systems, and established clear policies that prevented unauthorized family involvement in business operations. The structure that my parents had criticized as inadequate became a model for sustainable growth and professional excellence. Employee appreciation became a cornerstone of our company culture. Linda received a substantial bonus and promotion to senior designer in recognition of her loyalty during the crisis. Our new hires were carefully selected not just for their skills, but for their ability to work in an environment that prioritized mutual respect and clear communication over hierarchical control. Client relationships deepened as word spread about our company's resilience and commitment to professional excellence. Rocky Mountain Financial Services became one of our largest accounts, with Sarah Williams frequently referring other businesses to us, specifically because of how we'd handled the family crisis with integrity and professionalism. Success redefinition became an ongoing process of understanding that true achievement includes protecting what you build from anyone who tries to take it away, regardless of their relationship to you. The scared young woman who'd signed that original investment agreement learned to become someone who understood that love and manipulation are not the same thing even when they come from family members. Dating and personal relationships gradually resumed as I learned to trust my judgment about people's motivations and intentions. The experience with my parents had made me more cautious, but also more confident about setting boundaries and recognizing red flags early in relationships. I started seeing someone who understood and respected my independence, rather than trying to control or change me. Current business status exceeded every goal I'd set when starting the company. We now employ 12 full-time staff members, maintain offices in both Denver and Colorado Springs, and generate multiple six-figure annual revenue through contracts with major regional clients. The business my parents tried to steal has become something far bigger and more successful than they could have imagined. The relationship with Harold and Dolores continues evolving slowly. We maintain limited contact through holiday cards and occasional family gatherings, but the easy intimacy of my childhood relationship with them is gone forever. They've never apologized for their actions or acknowledged the damage they caused, but they've also stopped trying to interfere with my business or personal decisions. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I'd given in to their demands and signed over majority control of my company. Would they have successfully grown the business, or would their interference have destroyed everything I'd built? The question is unanswerable, but I'm grateful every day that I chose to fight rather than surrender. The most important lesson from this entire experience is that protecting your dreams sometimes requires disappointing people you love. Family relationships are precious, but they can't be preserved by sacrificing your integrity, independence, or life's work. Real love supports your success rather than trying to control or steal it. Success isn't just about building something great. It's about having the courage to protect it from anyone who tries to take it away, even if that someone is family. The email that destroyed my parents' legal case also destroyed the naive trust I'd once placed in people simply because they shared my DNA. But it replaced that naive trust with something stronger: confidence in my own judgment and determination to never again let anyone manipulate me through guilt, obligation, or false expressions of love. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting something you've worked hard to build? How do you handle situations where people you love try to control or manipulate your decisions? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let me know if you think I made the right choice in fighting my parents' demands. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and protecting what matters most. Share this video with anyone who might be facing similar family business conflicts, because sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your dreams are worth fighting for, no matter who tries to take them away. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that love requires sacrificing your independence or integrity.